Well, good day to you all, and this is Brent Smith, and I'm the Common Constitutionalist, and as you can see, or can't see, this is the Common Constitutionalist Weekend audio podcast, not video. I ran into some time constraints this weekend, so I've decided that I only have the time to do the audio portion this weekend, not video, and some people might be saying, yay, we don't have to look at them. Listening to them is bad enough. Watching them is even worse. I don't know. So anyway, we're going to do the audio version of the podcast only this weekend. And hopefully this isn't as long as it looks like it may be. Ye gad, because no one wants to, including me, wants to hear me drone on for a daggum hour, much less a half hour. So this is, the podcast is going to be entitled, because I've got all my wonderful notes here, Limbaugh's thoughts on the latest budget agreement. And we're going to be talking about that today on the Common Constitutionalist.
You are listening to the Common Constitutionalist, broadcasting from an undisclosed location, free from the prying eyes of establishment black helicopters.
So I was listening. Oh, welcome back, by the way. So I was listening to Rush Limbaugh on Friday, and I listen to Rush from noon to whenever, at the office, whenever I can listen to him. Sometimes I'm able to sit and listen while I work. Sometimes I'm up and about and can only catch snippets. But I was trying to listen to this one. I was interested in the topic of the budget agreement. Yay! And that's what he was talking about Friday. And I came away with this a little bit befuddled, I don't mind telling you. And I didn't understand it at the time, and I'm still not sure exactly what old Rushy boy was driving at. So let's just do this. It's about the massive 2-year-long continuing resolution dressed up as a budget, spending money that we don't have, releasing the feds from any spending caps for 2 years. Yes, there will be no spending caps, no budget deadlines for 2 years. So we don't, and that's wonderful. That's great. And I guarantee you, McConnell wishes, has always wished that. No threats of shutdowns for an entire 2 years. So everybody's happy. Yay. Now, over the years, not to pat myself on the back or anything, I've become a rather astute listener, a political listener, shall we say. And, but I gotta tell you, Limbaugh's thoughts on this topic they're a little confusing, and I'm not sure what he's driving at. So maybe you guys can listen to me, and maybe we can figure this out together, exactly where the crap he's coming from. So that's what we're gonna try and do. So here we go. And I pulled this off the transcript of the topic that he wanted to speak about on Friday. And this was Rush. Quote, the budget deal, it's a big deal. It's a 2-year budget deal. We talked about this yesterday. Well, we didn't, but he must have talked about it Thursday. I must have missed that part. And remember, I had an idea. I guess we remember he had an idea. Those who listened to Rush on Thursday probably know exactly what he's talking about. I don't. Whoop-de-doo. There's a lot of people, end quote, this is still a quote from him. There's a lot of people wondering about what is going on. All this spending combined with tax cuts, deficits as far as the eye can see. And it doesn't seem like it's very Republican. It doesn't seem like it's very conservative. Unquote. Okay, so first off, Limbaugh's a bit of a wordsmith, and he's said before that words mean things, and words do mean things. So first off, this is not a budget deal. It's a really long 2-year continuing resolution. It ain't a budget deal. No one had to vote for any budget items. No one had to make any hard choices. No one had to really vote for anything, and nothing had to be put in on time, like October 1st of each year. This country has gone without a real voted-on budget since the first year of Obama. That was 2009. It's now 2018, and we haven't had a budget in almost a decade. What a shocker. So we've been living on stopgap continuing resolutions for going on a decade. But Washington isn't dysfunctional or anything. No, of course not. But not having a budget isn't a matter of dysfunction, in my opinion. It's a matter of cowardice and ease on the right. Just the right, not the left. If it were up to the left, we could have budgets because it would be busting every year. But, as far as when the right's in control, we can't have a budget to continuing resolutions just because of their cowardice. And it's just easier to do it this way. But to be honest with you, the Dems love it too. It's tailor-made for their kind of emotion-only mob-style rule. And I've said before, and I'll say it again, that good legislation, federal, state, local, doesn't matter, good legislation can never come from emotional fervor, because the budget process is a deliberative process, and you have to get the emotion out of it to some extent. Yeah, sure, there's a deadline, but the budget process is more deliberative, so that's why the Democrats don't like the budgets. Because every time the latest continuing resolution lapses, the government, goes back and shuts back down again, and then in the 11th hour there's an emotional ramp up, and the emotion trumps the reason in deliberation, and shazam, more bad decisions. What a shocker. And no, I'm not going to go on a diatribe about how the government doesn't really shut down, blah, blah, blah. Just the continuing resolutions give the Dems multiple chances every single year to go to the well and extract more blood from those hemophiliac Republicans. All right, so that's settled, I guess. Now to Rush. I've been listening to Rush for a long time. Politically, I thought, there's no one better, and there's no one more astute, and there's no one, there hasn't been anyone more conservative, in my opinion. He's the guy that's been fair at holding both Democrat and Republican feet to the fire. No one was beyond reproach, and no one was beyond reasoned criticism, as far as Rush was concerned. And that's what we counted on him for. Not just for lending his voice to our feelings, but for doing this, for holding people's feet to the fire, whether they be right, left, center. It didn't make any difference. He was always fair that way. But at least for me, this all changed in 2017 when Trump was elected, maybe even a little earlier, when Rush knew Trump would beat Cruz for sure in the primaries. So at least as far as I'm concerned, or as far as in my estimation, Rush went from decades of being a consistent, small government, constitutional conservative, he gave no quarter to the right or the left. He went from that to becoming, in my opinion, a Trump sycophant and apologist. It's like Rush has bought into the winning at all cost mentality, and it's upsetting for me to even say this, think it and say it out loud, because I really have revered Rush Revere, get it? It's heartbreaking for me to have to say this, but it is what it is. So we're going to take a real quick break. We'll be right back with more fun and frivolity. Egad.
You're listening to The Common Constitutionalist. Let the truth be known.
All right, welcome back. Okay, so I just finished kind of saying that it just seems like Rush is throwing the conservatives under the bus to a certain extent, and siding with the Trump supporters, the blind Trump supporters, that this guy can literally do no wrong. What was that thing where he said I could step onto Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I still wouldn't lose any support? That's as true today as it was when he said it on the campaign trail, and unfortunately it appears to me as if Limbaugh has jumped on that bandwagon, and no matter what Trump does, good, bad, or indifferent, he's going to cut him some slack on it. And that just ain't right, okay? It just isn't right. I'm sorry. I mean, I've really, really liked what Trump's been doing, but if he does wrong, I'll call him on it. There's no excuse for it. And Rush has said this before, and many people have said this. I've said this. Trump is not a political conservative as we understand it. He's not an ideological conservative. He won't fight for something on these grounds. His policies so far have been darn good, like I just said. I've been thrilled with his performance. It's been great overall. But he has no desire to rein in government spending and nor to shrink government. Never has. And that's one of those bugaboos that bothers me about Trump and doesn't seem to bother these Trump supporters, which Rush seems to be one of them. Or maybe the guy, I don't know, maybe the guy's just masking it really well and just playing along. I don't know what Limbaugh is up to or what's going through his head. He's a lot smarter than I'll ever be, I suppose. But Trump doesn't seem to care about this stuff. He doesn't seem to care about over-government spending. He doesn't seem to care about large government, as it were. And lots of people say, well, he is cutting regulation. That gets government out of our lives. That's true, but it doesn't necessarily shrink government. It doesn't make it any smaller or less effective or less intrusive necessarily. He's cutting regulation to benefit business, not to shrink government. He has no problem with runaway spending or the sheer size of government. It's all about the winning for him. And to a certain extent, I congratulate him for that. I got no problem with winning. Wouldn't you rather be a winner than a loser? Abso-frickin-lutely. And it's also obvious that this guy loves America. He wants America first, and you gotta love that about the guy. It's great, and it's obvious that he loves America, which is why he's fighting for the wall, and I'm 100% behind him on that. Nothing short of his wall will do, and I hope he goes to. I hope this is one of the times where he will absolutely go to the mat and say no deal, no deal, no deal until they break down, until the other side breaks down and says, okay, fine, you give us what we want, we'll give you your dang wall. Now I know, and I can frankly probably hear people tuning out when I'm saying this stuff about Limbaugh, and again, it breaks my heart to say this kind of stuff because I never thought I'd say it. But Rush has been a conservative hero of mine since I figured out I was a conservative. I think I look forward to listening to his words of wisdom every day, and like he has said before, and like I just said a little while ago, he gives voice to what we were all thinking. That's what made him so popular, because he's saying what we're thinking. And he was the first guy on radio, the first guy on air to actually say the stuff in the manner that we would say it, that we're thinking. And that was terrific, and it still is terrific to this day. But the problem is, he's not saying it quite the way he used to anymore, or at least not as much. There's no balance, and I don't mean that bogus fair and balance that Fox News puts out there, where you always have to have a voice from the left and a voice from the right and blah, 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 and that's just bullcrap. Because we on the right that are tuned into this stuff, we already know what the voice on the left is going to say. We could parrot it back almost 100% verbatim most of the time. By fair and balanced, truly, I mean holding both sides' feet to the fire, regardless of who it is. It doesn't make any difference whether it's McConnell or Ryan or whether it's Cruz or Mike Lee. If they do wrong, if they do something out of sorts of conservatism, you have to call them on it, and that includes the president. And it's just, I guess it's killing me now. I used to be able to listen to Rush for the sheer joy of it, just like I said, because he was lending voice to my thoughts. And now it's killing me that I've got to listen attentively to this guy so I don't get sucked into some populist narrative. And it actually physically angers me sometimes when I'm listening to him saying, do you even hear yourself, man? Do you even hear yourself letting them off the hook? Do you even hear yourself? It ticks me off sometimes. So on Friday, Rush said on his radio show, quote, Trump signed it earlier this morning. That's the continuing resolution. So essentially, and I'm still quoting him, so essentially it's a 2-year budget deal. The main thing I think, and I admit this is cynical, but I think it's relevant. I think a lot of Republicans voted for this just to ensure that they will not be accused of shutting down the government for the next 2 years, unquote. And he is 100% right. I will guarantee you the McConnell wing of the Senate, I guarantee you, that these guys don't want. Well, McConnell said it himself a few years ago. There will be no other shutdowns ever in the history of humanity. He didn't say it that way, but he meant it that way. So we're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Common Constitutionalist. Let the truth be known.
Okie dokie, welcome back. All right, so quoting Rush some more, quote, they kick things down the road to avoid dealing with them. They meaning the Republican Senate. The Republicans, period. And this kicks the government shutdown 2 years down the road. Exactly right. Rush continues, to heck with whatever else happens here. There's massive amounts of defense spending, but also discretional spending is skyrocketing. It's going through the roof. There's not even any pretense here at balancing a budget. There's not even any pretense here of making the government smaller. There's not even a pretense. The conservative caucus, the Freedom Caucus in the House is beside itself, unquote. Now this is the Rush we know, we love, and we trust. And this is the truth teller that he says he is. This is exactly what we listen to him for. He's exactly right on every single one of these points. Here we go. Can I digress? Can I break for a minute and cover this defense spending nonsense? I'm so sick and tired of hearing about defense spending and how it's so daggum sacrosanct. Because we're conservatives and we love the military. And that's our default position. Our default position is supposed to be spend as much as possible on defense. And what a load of crapola that is. The Defense Department is just another government organization, which means it pisses away cash as well as every other daggum government department. The Interior Department, HUD, Education, Labor, Transportation, pick one. It doesn't make any difference. They all waste crap loads of money, and they're all the same in that regard. And the Department of Defense is no different from any of these departments in the regard of wasting our freaking money. We're absolutely forbidden as Republicans and conservatives to even speak that truth because it's for the soldiers, the sailor, the airman, the Coast Guard, and so on and so forth. And if you do say something derogatory about defense spending, then you must not support our precious troops. Well, right, yeah, you come tell me to my face that I don't support our troops, and your next sentence, you won't even be able to get it out of your mouth before you hit the ground. Okay, I support the troops, but I don't necessarily support the bloated freaking Defense Department, and that is the truth. Like every other bloated federal department, the DOD could probably do well or better with probably half the daggum budget they have now. Oh no, they might know I must not support the troops. What a load of crap. So let's get back to old L. Rushbaugh. Rush said that during the Rand Paul floor speech, Paul said that this is not what we ran on. This is not what we campaigned on. We ran out there, and every time Obama wanted to spend a dime during his administrative stay here on anything, we complained about it. Now nobody says a word when this spending goes through the roof. But Rand Paul was exactly right, and he's still right, and he'll always be right. When the Democrats are in charge, we whine and we complain. The conservatives, the political conservatives, we whine and complain all the time, but whatever. The political conservatives whine and complain about spending, and we need to curb spending, and we need to cut the government, and we need to blah, 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 cut the budget. And then when we get in charge, we spend like drunken sailors, the same as the Democrats do, and nobody's allowed to say a bloody word. And particularly if Trump signs on to it, then we're certainly not allowed to say anything. Sheesh. And this is where I got kind of confused in this whole mess. So Rush says, quote, but Paul voted for the tax cuts that were supposed to also bust the budget, unquote. I'm not even sure why Rush brought this up, because he knows tax cuts don't bust the budget, and they won't bust the budget. It's a non-issue, but he brought it up anyway. Rush adds that, quote, There's going to be more money rolling into Washington than those guys can count, but they don't score it that way. My point is, with everybody claiming that the tax cut was going to raise the deficit, there's Rand Paul right in there voting for it. Well, that's, again, this is a specious argument, if it's even an argument, and this is why I'm confused by what Limbaugh is saying here. He knows daggum well that the tax cuts won't cost anything because of dynamic scoring, which the government doesn't know how to do. He knows that it's going to bring crap loads more money into the coffers and so on and so forth. And so I don't know why he would bring this thing up with Rand Paul. Rand Paul can fight against spending, but vote for tax cuts. They don't equate. I don't know why the heck he brought this up. It doesn't make any sense. So I'm quoting a Limbaugh again, Rush again. Quote, so while he, Rand Paul, may be scoring big on trying to stop this vote last night because it's budget busting, you could say that he busted the budget by supporting the tax cuts the way they look at it. Unquote. Well, I don't know who the heck they are, but they are wrong. And Rush, you should tell them that they're wrong rather than playing this mind game or word game. I don't understand it, but whatever. Maybe Rush is smarter than them. I just don't know what tax cuts have to do with massive increases in spending. It's not. Other than from a Democrat perspective, I guess. But again, who gives a rat's what Democrats say or think? Conservatives, we all know better that tax cuts won't cost. They'll actually provide more revenue, which is unfortunate because we don't want more revenue for the government. So for me, it's kind of a double-edged sword. So I read on the transcript because I missed most of this show, so I had to go back and read Rush's transcript, and thank heavens that he does transcribe or have these things transcribed. So Rush talked about Matt Gaetz. He's a Republican from Florida, and he was on Neil Cavuto's Fox Business show. So Cavuto said, quote, do you think the gain of tax cuts will overcome the apparent hypocrisy of party that talks big on containing spending but now has spent on the issue, unquote? Gaetz says, quote, we better hope so. I didn't vote for that spending, but I think at the end of the day, people will vote based on whether or not they believe their personal economic conditions are better or worse. If you were to judge us today, people are doing better than they did in the Obama economy, unquote. And that's exactly true. And it's also true that most of the public, now that their paychecks are growing and they're getting bonuses and whatnot, they're going to pay less attention to the economy overall. They're going to pay less attention to the deficit and the debt and everything else because their personal wealth is growing. Their station is improving, so they don't much care about what else is going on in the country. It's just human nature. It's the way it goes. And maybe this is Rush's whole point, that the tax cuts, which are already bringing in a ton of cash to the government, it'll more than make up for the massive increase in spending. And is that the point? I hope it's not the point, because it's a disjointed point if it's anything. I mean, it would be like getting a raise in your salary, and the raise starts next month, and you and your wife or whatever sit down and you work out an increase in your budget, so all the additional income is already spent by the time you get it in. That's the way this appears to be going. That we're going to make up for the massive increase in spending by tax cuts, which will bring more revenue in. That's just great. So then Rush puts it to the callers. Quote, does this budget bother you? If so, why? And if not, why? He's asking the callers. Because in the textbook of conservatism, every bit of this is a no-no except for the military spending. In my opinion, so is the military spending. Sorry, they don't need it. It's being funneled off into other areas that they don't need. They don't need this much daggum money. They don't need $500 billion every daggum year to run the military. Sorry, they don't. He continues, quote, every bit of this could be chalked up to a major, huge hypocrisy. You guys ran on balancing the budget, unquote. Now, he goes on to talk about gloom and doom of deficit spending that will come back to bite us eventually, but eventually never comes. And so far, he's absolutely right. Eventually never does come, because so far we've been able to a point, keep up with at least GDP has kept ahead of the debt. Unfortunately, now the debt is now officially ahead of GDP. I think GDP is about 19 point something trillion dollars a year, and the debt has eclipsed $20 trillion a year. So now we are digging ourselves into a hole. Before we were just right above the hole, right at the entrance to the hole, and now we're falling into the rabbit hole. He continues, quote, "And while this has all been happening, we have been listening to gloom and doom preached to us every year, and there hasn't been the gloom and doom that has been predicted relating to budgeting. It just hasn't happened. Now we could be, as Rush, he's saying this, as I so astutely observed yesterday, I guess, we could be in the middle of it finally mattering here, and we can't see it. The dragon could be at the door, and we don't know it. The monster could be lurking out there, and we just don't see it," unquote. He continues, "But the monster, we've been told, is always there, and with every new budget, the monster's going to eat us all. Yet we're still here. So I'd like to know, does this bug you? Does it bother you? If so, why? If not, why not? There isn't any wrong answer," he says, "so don't think you're going to get your head chewed off here," unquote. And so I think this one is really instructive when he goes on to talk about Trump, that he's a winner. Quote, "The real question is, why aren't Trump's voters up in arms over this? He didn't campaign on this, and the Republicans sure as hell didn't. Now some establishment Republicans like Mitch McConnell, they love this. There's plenty of Republicans that love big government spending. And that's why the Trump supporters, including you, Rush, aren't going to say anything, because Trump also supports the big government spending. He signed the continuing resolution, just like everybody else voted yay for it, or at least a huge portion of them did. And that's why the Trump supporters, and that's why you, and that's why Hannity and all the rest of the Trump guys are not going to say anything, because if you said that you didn't support this, that meant that you didn't support Trump. And you have to support Trump, and that's just the way it is. There's nothing wrong with supporting the president. I support the president, but this was bullcrap, okay? That was it. You know, it's like, Trump supports something, and everyone says, "Yes, master, if you say so, master." That man, I don't care who you are, left, right, center, whatever, that ain't right. You got to think for yourself. And most of what Trump does is great. This stuff, when he buys into this bullcrap, but doesn't seem to care about it, not so good. So we'll take our final quick break of this really long podcast. I'm sorry about this, folks, but I got to get this stuff out. And I'll be right back. All right, I'm back for the final, hopefully short segment, because I got to tell you, I think I'm even sick of listening to my own voice. Yeesh. Okay, so let me end up with something else that you guys might not like, particularly if you're Trump people. The fact is that Trump is going to remain popular with his base no matter what he does. And this is exactly what we saw from Obama's base. Sorry, but it's the same thing on the right and the left. It doesn't matter. The base is going to stay with Trump just like the base stayed with Obama. Sorry, but it's the truth. But at what expense? The Dems suffered mightily at the ballot box, and the reason is because Obama made everything about him, not the party, not the Democrat movement. It was all about the Baumeister. That's what it was. And unfortunately, we might see this playing out again. Luckily for Trump, he's got the economy on his side. He's got the tax cut bill, and people vote their pocketbooks. But again, if that's not the case, if this thing dies down, the Republicans are going to get blamed for whatever big government crap they push on us, but Trump will remain inoculated completely, just the exact same as Obama. And this is not a scenario that we can win on for very long, in my opinion. That it's going to be all about Trump and not about the Republicans. It's going to be all about Trump and not about the right. It's going to be all about Trump and not about our conservative ideology. It's just going to be winning with Trump, and it's all about Trump. That's the exact same that it was all about Obama. And boy, did the Democrats suffer. We gained, they suffer. I just don't want to see it play out like that again. Thank you for listening. You guys have a pleasant balance of the weekend. That's about all I have because I'm tired of talking, and believe you, brother, I bet you're tired of listening. I'm out. See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Common Constitutionalist Weekly Podcast.